Welcome to Let's Talk Surrogacy, where we explore all things surrogacy, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. Today, I have a very special guest, Alison. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, Alison, will you just give me like a little bit of a backstory on you?
I have always, loved helping people. I play 10 musical instruments. And my daughter is quite the same as me. She's very outgoing, and whenever I'm not at work, then, we like to go on adventures. We take little mini vacations, and really, we're not homebodies by any means.
Not.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course.
I really want to dive into, since this podcast is all about surrogacy and you were a surrogate, I just want to get started and talking about what was the moment when you realized this was something that you wanted to do? How were you feeling? Just explain all that to me if you would.
Yeah, so I think unlike a lot of people, I knew I wanted to be a surrogate whenever I was 8 years old. Kind of funny story, was watching Baby Mama with my mom and my grandma. And I was like, oh my God, one day I want to do that. And I had always been obsessed with babies and pregnancy. And my mom was like, one day you're not going to feel that way. I was like, okay, we'll see.
Right.
And then when I turned 18, I looked into it and it was like, no, actually, you can't just sign up to be pregnant if you don't meet all these qualifications. And after I had my daughter and I was financially independent, that's whenever I actually started looking into it. And I found American Surrogacy and signed up.
When you finally decided and met the criteria, what were you feeling?
Yeah, I was at a point where I didn't want any more children, but I loved being pregnant. I loved everything about it, unlike a lot of women.
Right.
I was like, okay, well, my job would allow me to do this. Also, it's a point of conversation every time somebody hears now that I'm a surrogate. Even still, we talk about it forever because everybody always has so many questions. But yeah, I was just super excited to kind of get into it. And my family was kind of hesitant about it at first because they didn't know a lot about it. So I kind of had to educate them a little bit too.
Yeah, so I would imagine that having a strong support system during this process is paramount.
Yeah.
Who was your biggest supporter?
My biggest supporter was probably my friend group, because I had been talking about it for years, that whenever I finally made the jump and did it, I had my friends going to every ultrasound, every doctor's appointment. Because even before you get pregnant, there's a lot that goes into it. And I also, granted, I work in healthcare now, and I deal with needles on a daily basis. I am not good with needles. So I had my friends and even my younger sisters give me my shots every single day. So definitely my friends and my sisters.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I know that you can either use an agency or you don't have to. How did American Surrogacy really catch your eye, and why did you decide on them?
Yeah, so, there's the independent route and the agency route. And the thing that I really liked about just the idea of working with an agency is if there are things that can be uncomfortable to talk about, for instance, money is just an uncomfortable thing to talk about, that I knew that I wasn't going to have to be like, hey, there's this bill, can you pay it? It was just, hey, American Surrogacy, here's the bill, and then they would take it from there. Also, if I had any questions, and especially at first, these people are strangers. And there's not a big relationship there at the beginning. Now I still talk to the parents and the family. But at first, I was afraid to ask them a lot of questions, and just kind of it was uncomfortable. So I knew that I could just go to, Katie, who was my coordinator, and she either already had the answer or she was like, I'll check and then I'll let you know. So that was really the thing that drew me to just using an agency in general. But American Surrogacy, there's so many agencies out there, and they all vary, and base pay and all of these things. And actually, American Surrogacy wasn't even one of the highest paying agencies, but the thing I liked was the closeness that I felt. Granted, I live here, so it's, I know if I need something, I could just literally drive up to the building. But also just they seemed very open about it, everything. There weren't any like closed doors. It didn't seem sketchy, and some agencies seem kind of sketchy.
Yeah.
So, really, it was just, I think that I just really clicked with American Surrogacy more than anybody else.
It sounds like to me that American Surrogacy and Katie kind of also became part of that support network for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Which I think is really beautiful and kind of necessary because, with pregnancy, the emotions are up and down. And especially when you're carrying someone else's child, that's got to have a lot of pressure and a lot of questions, especially your first time.
Oh, yeah, hands down. And like the thing that I really liked about American Surrogacy was, once I like every trimester, they would also send me like little gift boxes. Oh. And I mean, it's not a big thing, but, like belly butter is always nice to have for stretch marks. And they even sent me a hospital bag at the end with everything in it. And all I had to do was like put my pajamas in there. So
that's amazing.
It was awesome.
It's always just the little things, the little touches of like customer service that make all the difference.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm really glad you had such a positive experience with American Surrogacy and just throughout.
Yeah.
So I'd like to get into the actual pregnancy.
For sure.
And you had mentioned before about the needles and not liking that.
Yeah.
What was the worst part about being pregnant?
Well, being pregnant or the getting pregnant, because those are two different things.
Well, let's do the getting pregnant first.
Needles, hands down. At first, because they're intramuscular, so they're not the itty bitty tiny needles. They're literally 1.5 inches long. And yeah, I was so bruised on my butt. And, there's things you can do, like, you massage all the knots out and everything. But I mean, we did the mock cycle first. And then after all of that, then I started the real cycle. So it's like I was on these fertility drugs for what felt like forever. I think in reality, it was just a couple months. But I mean, getting a shot every single day for 60 days is a lot.
Yeah. So explain to me, what's the mock?
Yeah. So initially they'll do a mock cycle, which is like a test just to make sure that you can handle all of the fertility drugs. And then also, so the fertility clinic that we used was in North Carolina. So we spent 2 weeks on all these drugs. Then I went to North Carolina and they did a saline ultrasound. So they fill your uterus with saline, I think it's to check for scar tissue, stuff like that from previous pregnancy. And then also I got an ERA biopsy done, which not every surrogate gets that done. It's really just to see when the best time for implantation would be, because they literally scrape off parts of the lining of your cervix. Or not cervix, uterus.
Yeah.
Yeah, so fun. But yeah, so that was all within that mock cycle. And then we got the results back that, yes, I'm fertile and everything looks good. And then also I had a really, really thick uterine lining where I was always above where they wanted it to be. So I was like, yes.
Gold star.
I kept on making the joke every time we had an ultrasound. It was like, look at my uterus. It is so pretty. Look at her. But yeah, so that was all within the mock cycle. And then after that finished, I took a break until I got my next period. And then that's whenever we started the real thing.
It was go time.
Yeah, it was go time.
So about how many shots would you get in a week?
One every single day. So 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you weren't all day long having
No.
did you have to check your body temperature or any of that?
I didn't have to. That wasn't a part of what they wanted me to do. But, I've heard that, if you're trying to get pregnant, you want to carry your own baby, that some of that goes into it. But, we weren't using my eggs or any of my ovulation stuff. So it was, I don't think it mattered.
Through the whole process, what surprised you the most?
Second pregnancies, man, they're so different than first pregnancies. With my daughter, I didn't even really show that I was like people didn't start commenting on me being pregnant until I was like 6 months. And with this one, I looked 6 months pregnant when I was like 10 weeks pregnant. I was like, great. And my OB was like, well, your body is just like, oh, we remember this. And they go right back to where they're supposed to be. And I was like, cool. And there at the end, I was like, I don't think that I can get any bigger. Like, I genuinely don't think that's possible. And I did. I got much bigger. So yeah, I think that was the most surprising.
Just the difference between the first and the second and how completely different they were.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I was interviewing somebody a few weeks ago who was saying she felt like because she had had all these totally great pregnancy. She loved being pregnant. And then she did her first surrogacy and her body was like, totally different. And she thought maybe it had to do with the fact that it's not your own genetic makeup. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's any relevance or truth to that, but.
I don't know either. I know that really just, I mean, the fertility drugs alone, because you do still have to keep, once they like do the implantation, you do still have to stay on like progesterone until you're like 12 weeks pregnant. And the progesterone makes you so bloated. And I was so gassy and constipated. It was everything. I was like, I had never experienced this before. Pregnancy is supposed to be a breeze.
And then you lost your support system.
Yeah. I was like, no.
No, Alison.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
So I know that it's kind of a big deal to get matched with someone. Can you walk me through that process and how you were feeling and what the connection was and if there was one? And
yeah, so I was actually initially matched with another family before this one. Because I went into this like, you know, I'm a big believer, I mean, God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. I say the universe. And I was like, you know, whoever the universe brings to me, that's going to be the right match. As long as there's no weird red flags and, you know, they are on the same page with me as far as what I want. I mean, I will have a baby for pretty much anybody. And the initial match that I had was, you know, this wasn't going to be their first baby, but they, you know, just weren't able to conceive on their own. And then out of nowhere, I got a message that, oh, actually, they found out their embryos are no longer viable. And I was like, that really sucks. Yeah. So, and since they had to go make all new embryos, it was going to take a while. And Katie was like, look, I don't want you to have to wait through all that unless you really, really wanted these people. You know, we can find another match. I said, yeah, let's put feelers out. Let's see about another match. And that's whenever I was matched with my current family. The mother had their daughter, and you know, she was just a little bit older and had some complications with the pregnancy. And they were like, look, it's not safe for you to have any more babies, but they had so many embryos still and they still wanted a big family. And so that's when they looked into surrogacy. And honestly, going back, I would not change anything. I think that they were supposed to be the family that I had a baby for. Not only are we very similar, like I am very much like the mother, and then her husband is very much like my partner, Liz. Like whenever we all hang out, it is great. Like we just mesh so well. But I think also, you know, she had been through everything I was going through. She had been through already. So I didn't have anybody in my life who had either gone through IVF or, because in my family, we all have whoopsie babies. So
I can relate to that.
Yeah. So it was nice to, you know, the fact that I couldn't talk to anybody in my current support system, but I could always go to the mother. And I was like, this really sucks, you know? And like, she had also had to have the ERA biopsy, which was incredibly painful. And so, you know, being able to kind of bond with her on that, I think made our relationship a lot deeper. But as far as the matching goes, they were very much whatever you want, we want. And I was very much whatever you want, I want. So really the only thing that I definitely wanted was, for me, I don't like a lot of medical intervention whenever it comes to delivery. Like I didn't want to be induced. I didn't want an epidural. I didn't want any of that. So I was like, when the time comes, I want to be able to go into labor on my own. And, this is what I envision that looking like. I want you guys to be there as long as you want to be there. I want you guys to be an active participant in everything. And they were like, yeah, of course. Like, of course we would love to be there if you would love to be there or if you want us to be there. And, I went as far as like, and granted, they live out of state.
Okay,
so it was a lot harder for them to be in person for things. But, I was like, if you want your mom or your sister to be in the room, feel free. I had like 20 people of my own family in the room when I had my daughter. I'm not shy. So, they were very, very accommodating and everything. And that's just kind of whenever I knew like, hey, this is the match.
That's
These are the
awesome.
ones. Yeah.
So did they come for the delivery?
Of course.
Yeah.
And they made it just in time because the day before, so my due date was June 23rd. And then that was a Sunday. And on that Friday, I was like, I don't know, are these contractions? Like, I'm just terrible of knowing when I'm in labor, I guess, because I did the same thing with my kid. And they had talked about coming down on the 22nd anyway. They were like, look, the due date's right around the corner. They were talking about having to do some type of induction the following week if I didn't have the baby. And because with surrogacy, you know exactly how far along you are, and the placenta can start to decay if you're pregnant for too long. And so I was like, okay. And I was doing everything possible. I was drinking the red raspberry tea and being on a yoga ball, everything. And so they were like, okay, we'll come down the day before your due date just in case. And on Friday, I was talking to my partner, Liz. I was like, I don't know. I just don't want them to miss it. I just have a feeling they're going to miss it if they come down tomorrow. And she was like, just tell them to leave earlier in the morning. It's a 7-hour drive. And so I texted him. I was like, actually, could you guys just get here earlier tomorrow? Like, I think I'm having contractions, but it doesn't feel like super serious. And they were like, yeah, of course. So they left super early in the morning. And then around 11, because my partner went to work, and around 11 that morning, I was like, yeah, I think I'm definitely in labor, because we had also moved the day before. And so I was trying to unpack the kitchen, and that was the thing that I think did it. And so I called her. She was like, okay, let me finish what I'm doing and just like call me if it gets worse. And I was like, okay. Literally an hour later, I was like, yep, this is definitely labor. You need to get home right now. And the parents had made it to my house just in time. We literally threw our bags in the car as soon as they showed up at our house. We drove to the hospital, and, then it was game time. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, I just love that you developed such a close relationship with this family.
Me too.
And it sounds like you guys are still in contact.
Yeah.
So walk me through that. How old's the baby?
Well, I had her in June
of last year.
Yes.
Okay.
Since she's not mine, I don't know how many months or
Right.
weeks. I'd have to count it, but she'll be 1 in June.
Are you going to attend her 1-year birthday party?
I don't know, because I don't know what everything's going to look like at that point, because, they live 7 hours away. So it's a bit of a trip. We got to take like a weekend off in order to go up there. But yeah, I don't know. I'm sure I'll be invited though.
And so do you like get regular like updates on her, or do you reach out to them just to check on her?
I mean, honestly, like, because people ask me that all the time. They're like, oh, well, do you get to see the baby? I'm like, okay, this is going to sound terrible. And I'm acknowledging that this sounds terrible. But I don't care as much about the baby as I do about the parents, because that baby was never mine. Yeah, I grew her. And, she did not like me when she was born. She cried every time I tried to hold her. But, the parents are the ones that I bonded with over the last year. And so really the weirdest part after having the baby was just kind of like, okay, so we don't really, what do we talk about now, know? But after the baby was born, right before the mom went back to work, because she took time off to obviously take care of the baby, we went up there for a weekend, and I got to meet their entire family, and all of the kids. They call me Aunt Alison. And I'm like, oh, this is so sweet. But yeah, so I don't really get updates about the baby as much as I do about like their whole family. It's because we're friends catching up. And, I've like been through a lot. Like my mother passed away in October last year, and the mother and I talked a lot. You know, she was always there for me and she's also a doctor. So the second we found out my mom was sick, I was like, okay, this is what they're all saying. Like, can you decode this for me? And she was a really, really good person to have there for all of that. So, yeah.
I love that. You mentioned that you had a daughter.
Yes.
How old was she during this process, and how did you explain what was happening?
So she was 6. So she's definitely older. And she is a lot like I was at that age, obsessed with babies, obsessed with pregnancy. And, you know, I told her, I was like, okay, so I'm going to have a baby for this lovely family that, you know, can't have babies. And she was like, I don't understand. And I was like, okay, well, the baby's going to grow in my tummy. And then whenever the baby's born, you know, we're going to take care of it while it's in my tummy. And then after the baby's born, then we're going to give the baby back to its parents because the baby's not ours. It's not my baby. It's not our baby. And she was like, okay, like that made sense, you know? But it became really difficult when she would try and explain it to other people. Well, because also, how do babies get in there? How are they going to do that? And unlike a lot of parents, I'm very straightforward with my daughter. You know,
You mean there wasn't a stork involved?
No. Gosh, no. Although, you know, now she thinks that the only way that babies get into people's uteruses is through needles and doctors.
Right.
So, because while I was getting my shots and everything, there were a few nights where I would cry because I was just like overly hormonal. And my daughter would come in, she'd like rub my back. She's like, it's okay, Mom. And I was like, thank you. But whenever she went to school and told everybody I was pregnant, they were like, that's so exciting. Are you going to have a brother or a sister? What do you want to have? She's like, no, it's not my brother or sister. My mom doesn't like babies, so we're giving it back to its parents. I was like, I'm sorry. What did you say? And so, I had to email the school on that one. And also, you know, just everybody we came into contact with that saw I was pregnant. Then it was, no, my mom's a surrogate. And then they'd be like, oh, you're a surrogate. Well, that's so cool. And then we'd spend 20 minutes talking to strangers in grocery stores. But yeah, so maybe has also had told her entire class that that babies, that doctors put a needle in your vagina and that's how babies get there. So
a little education on the schoolyard.
So sorry to all of the parents in her class.
They're like, blast you, Alison. Now we have to have this sex talk with our 6-year-old.
Yeah. And now she wants a brother or sister now. And I was like, we'll see, you know, probably. And she was like, okay, well, is the doctor going to have to put the needle in you again? And I was like, okay, we're not having this conversation right now. Let's do it later.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what was something that was completely unexpected during this whole journey?
I'd probably say, so I was a high-risk pregnancy, and I wasn't with my daughter. They initially, you know, everything was fine. But whenever we went to my OB appointment, and I FaceTime with the parents for everything, it was kind of hard to find the heartbeat. Like he was really pushing and digging around. And I had asked about that, and he was like, you probably have an anterior placenta, and it just seems like it's kind of low. And I was like, what's an anterior placenta? And anterior placenta means that the placenta is on the outside of your stomach versus like on the back. So whenever it came to the baby kicking and all of that, I could feel it, but you can't really feel it on the outside. But this early in the pregnancy, it was like, you know, the parents had mentioned, should we go see a high-risk doctor just to get it checked out? Because also IVF babies have higher risks of like heart complications and stuff. So we were going to have to go anyway. So we went to the high-risk doctor, and they said that, well, and they put me on pelvic rest because of low-lying placenta. And then by the time we went to the high-risk doctor, they said that there were placental lakes, which I had never heard of before, which are essentially just like blood-filled holes in the placenta that can lead to infant like growth restriction. And it's something that we were definitely aware of. And so that's why I had to keep on coming back. And then also my placenta, like if this is your cervix, my placenta was kind of sitting on my cervix. And they were like, well, it can grow out of the way. It'll probably grow out of the way as you get bigger. So don't worry. But until then, you're on pelvic rest. So I was on pelvic rest for like 3 or 4 months. It was terrible.
What did that entail?
So like literally nothing that would cause your uterus to contract, essentially. And I'm like, okay. And then, after a few months, I had to go back to the high risk doctor I think it was like every 4 weeks. And eventually they were like, okay, your placenta's out of the way. And I was like, sweet. Yes! So I'm not high risk anymore. And they're like, actually, no, these placental lakes are still here. And I was like, okay, got it. And so I did have to keep going. And then towards the end of the pregnancy, I had to go every single week. And they were worried about the baby being small. And then in all of the growth scans, they were like, oh, she's in the 80th percentile. She's in the 70th percentile. I'm like, okay, she can stop growing now. That's going to be a really big baby. And they were trying to talk me into induction because they were like, this is going to be an 8.5 pound baby. This baby's going to be big. And I was like, I just don't. No, I don't. She's not going to be big. Call it denial, call it intuition, call whatever you want. But I was like, no, she is a small little baby. And I am going to keep on saying that till the end. Because also the parents were small babies and their first daughter was a small baby. They were all 5-6 pounds. So I was like, there's no way that I am growing a 9-pound child right now. And of course, whenever she came out, one of the first things I said, I was like, she is not 8 pounds. And she wasn't. She was barely 7 pounds. Oh. So I don't trust the growth scans anymore, needless to say. But yeah, I'd say that being high risk was definitely just the most unique and experience, and also just like surprise.
Did you feel a lot of pressure? I mean, it seems like, here somebody is invested not only money, but time. Like that must have been really emotionally taxing and nerve-wracking, like to just worry that everything was going to turn out okay. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, there at the beginning, especially when everything's so volatile, you don't know, like, are you going to have a miscarriage? And before that, is the baby even going to stick? And like, we're working with limited embryos too. Right. So it's not like they could just make more. This is it. And I was so lucky. There's a lot of weird little things that surrogates do to get the baby to stick. And I did everything, whether that was I wore fuzzy fun socks to the implantation. Then we got McDonald's fries after, because that's one. I had a pineapple smoothie because that's another one. Like just all of these weird, quirky things. I was like, they probably mean nothing, but I'm doing it.
Well, it's the power of the mind when you think about it. Like,
and yeah. So I would really say the most nerve-wracking stuff was just okay, this baby really needs to stick. And then once I hit 12 weeks, I was like, she's fine. She's not going anywhere. Like this baby's in there. So yeah, I wouldn't say that it was super nerve-wracking after I was like definitely pregnant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can relate. I had a almost 10-pound baby that broke his collarbone on his way out.
You deserve an award.
It was, I labored for like 23 hours and they were ready to do a C-section. I'm like, nope, he's coming. And sure enough, it was like just that fear of having to be cut open. I was like,
yes,
you're on your way, buddy.
Yeah. Well, with the placenta thing, that's why I was so scared. That was really, really scary, because I was like, I don't want to be cut open. And I remember saying, I was like, I'm having a baby for somebody else. I should have the easiest pregnancy ever. This should not be happening. Yeah. And, eventually everything was fine.
I'm so glad.
Me too.
Looking back, what was one thing that exceeded your expectation with American surrogacy?
I would say the involvement, definitely. I mean, even still to this day, because for whatever reason, bills never stop coming after you have a baby. I experienced it with my own. And with this one, I'll still like get a bill in the mail and I'm like, I thought we did this already. And all I had to do, hey, here you go. Here's the bill. And, that's something that's always been taken care of. But also while I was pregnant, Katie was always there if I needed just somebody to talk to, even going through all of the the scary parts of pregnancy, she was always there. And, I had a complicated delivery. And, I had a postpartum hemorrhage and then a uterine infection that sent me back to the hospital a few days later. And Katie came up to the hospital. She brought me lunch and, she was just there to talk. And it was so helpful, genuinely.
Well, it just sounds like you kind of became family,
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how they treated you, and that's wonderful.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that the parents had at least a similar experience because they're going to continue to use American surrogacy for their other babies that they want to have. And actually, another thing that I just now remembered, there was that whole thing with SEAM, with the escrow accounts, where nobody could access the money. All the money was gone. And American surrogacy took that on themselves. And, because, of course, this happened whenever we're trying to put money down on a house. And so I was actually really counting on that. And they're like, you know what? We're going to send it to you anyway. We'll deal with the escrow accounts later. And that really showed me that this company didn't only care about money, that they were here to genuinely help all of the people that they were working with.
Well, and I don't think a lot of people understand that in that situation where these fraudsters basically in this escrow company just blew all the money on all kinds of, and it really, because it was a third party, American surrogacy wasn't expected legally to have to cover it. And the fact that they did that, I think, like you said, just speaks volumes, that it is more about, think of all those surrogates that did not use American surrogacy. That
exactly.
Most companies wouldn't just go pay that. They'd wait for the legal proceedings and hope that, but in the meantime, here you are pregnant.
Yeah.
And all these bills are coming, it's really a wonderful thing that they did.
Well, and I know for a fact that not all agencies did that.
I'm quite confident they did.
Because that's actually the one selling point when I'm talking to other surrogates, why they should use American surrogacy. I'm like, look, I don't know about the other ones, but I know that they didn't leave me or the parents high and dry.
Yeah.
So.
And I could imagine that is a very costly thing that American surrogacy would just have to eat.
Well, yeah. I don't even know how many pregnant people they got out there, but it couldn't have been cheap.
Well, I'm so grateful that you did use American surrogacy and that you were, did you get your house?
I did.
Yay!
Yeah, it's great. We love it.
So after your pregnancy, I know you said you were in the hospital and had some medical complications, but emotionally, was there a difference between when you were pregnant with your daughter versus, maybe postpartum depression or any of that? And I ask that because I wonder with the fertility drugs, if that adds another layer of emotionality, I guess.
Yeah. So I actually had postpartum depression with my daughter.
Okay.
And I didn't with the surrogacy baby. Granted, my situation having my daughter was way different than this. This was actually planned, and this was something I got into. I was really emotional. Like, I remember talking to my L&D nurse because I woke up and I was just crying. I was like, why am I crying? I'm not sad. Like, I don't understand why I'm crying right now. She goes, honey, that's just your emotions, because the hormonal drop that you experience, whether you do IVF or not, after having a baby is the equivalent to taking 100 birth control pills a day and then just stopping them cold turkey.
Cold turkey.
Yeah. So the hormonal drop is insane. But other than just like weird crying spells, I didn't really have any issues. And I was just a lot more lovey, I'd say, with my daughter, because also it's so weird going home and not having a baby to take care of. It was like, okay, so I'm not doing anything while I heal for the next 6 weeks, but I don't have anything to take care of, and I can't get out of my bed because I'm on bed rest. So I don't know what to do. Yeah.
Lots of snuggles.
Lots of snuggles, lots of binge watching TVs.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it's so great.
Well, and I would imagine some of the postpartum with your daughter was you weren't sleeping, you were up feeding, whereas with this surrogacy, you didn't have to do any of that. You could really just focus on yourself and your daughter and your family.
That's actually the one thing that I hear a lot about with other surrogates is that the recovery is so much easier because you can actually sleep.
Yeah.
And yeah, hands down, that is the truth. The only thing is I did wake up to pump like every few hours.
I was going to ask.
Yeah. But even then, it's not like I'm in a frantic state of mind, like, okay, I need to change the baby and then, breastfeed and then put her down. Like, no, it was literally just, I wake up, attach a pump to my chest and then go put it in the fridge and then go to sleep.
Now, so did you pump for them and then give the milk to them?
Yeah. So initially,
you're like what's a nursemaid?
Yeah. Initially, that was the plan. And I had gotten a little bit of colostrum, and then I had to go back to the hospital, and I had to be on pretty hard IV meds. So then I just was like, you know what? They're making it work with formula, so we're going to go ahead and cut it off. So yeah.
Well, was the plan for you to do that for like an extended period of time, or?
I mean, they were very much, like I said, whatever you want, we want. And, I was like, milk is going to come in whether I want it to or not. I can easily send it to you guys so that way you can use it for your baby, because there's a lot of benefits of breast milk, especially colostrum within like the first, few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to be able to do that for them. Yeah.
A lot of surrogates have such great experiences that they want to do it again. Where are you in that?
Yeah, if you would have asked me at the beginning of my pregnancy when all of the scary stuff was happening, I would have said no. But now that we're past everything, and honestly, after like 24 hours after I had the baby, I was like, do you think I could still do it again? Because they have other embryos. Like, I want to have another baby for them. And, I don't think, like, personally, I don't think that I would have a baby for a complete stranger again. Like as a second time surrogate. First time, yes. But second time, no, just because I built such a strong relationship with the family that I'd be like, yeah, let me have another kid for you guys. And, the parents and I have definitely talked about it. But, given I had some postpartum complications, I'm going to have a baby for our family first to show everyone that I can successfully have a baby and, not hemorrhage. And then I'll probably have another one for the same family as well. And they love American surrogacy, as do I. And so we definitely use American surrogacy again.
Oh, wonderful. I was just getting ready to ask, would you recommend and would you use American surrogacy?
I would. Actually, every single person I talk to that's like, I thought about doing that. I'm like, you should look into American surrogacy. So I'm kind of a free salesperson for you guys.
Advocate.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I love that.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time and tell yourself something that you didn't know back then, how could you redo, or what advice would you give yourself?
I would probably say to actually take all of the potential risks seriously, because I didn't. I was like, no, I had a breeze of a first pregnancy. None of that awful stuff is going to happen to me. And I did have to deal with a little bit of the scary stuff. Everything ended up working fine. And then, delivery, they say that you have a stickier placenta when you use IVF, and so the placenta is harder to come out. That is what happened in my case. And had some, scary stuff. So I would definitely say to actually pay attention and weigh all of that and make sure it's the right decision. Like, I'd say that to everybody.
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to understand, no matter what the procedure is, medical, surgical, whatever, that you have to plan for what if something goes wrong, and am I able to take a significant amount of time off of work to recover?
Yeah.
Because complications do happen. I've had them. I mean, I had emergency surgery, thinking that, this plastic surgery would be a breeze, and it was not. So I think that's a really good word of caution to people to really look through because it's pages and pages and pages. And
well, yeah. And they say all of the time, like literally every single meeting that I had prior, it was like, okay, you understand that, like these are all of the terrible things, like even death. And I'm like, okay, let's not talk about that.
Right.
But, that was actually a really lengthy conversation that we had to have with the parents too, was, like, what if I was in a car accident while I was pregnant? would I be willing to keep my body on life support to grow the baby the rest of the way?
Oh, wow.
That kind of stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of really deep questions that you need to not only be super open to having a truthful conversation. Like for me, don't just say, I was like, okay, don't say whatever they want to hear. Don't be a people pleaser, because this is their baby, but this is your body.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I am the one that's going to have to deal with whatever happens to my body after. And, you know, I feel like that can be taken really, really lightly. And I just say I don't want to say word of caution because it makes it sound scary, but if you're thinking about it, be ready to have those really hard conversations and talk about your potential death.
Yes.
So,
wow, that sounds like they really think of everything.
Yeah. Yes.
I would never have thought like, oh, I'm in a car wreck and I'm brain dead and my body's just going to be on life support until the baby grows.
Yeah.
What was one moment that was so special that you hope every surrogate gets to experience?
I don't know if I would say that it was like one specific moment, but I mean, really, my delivery was everything that I wanted it to be. Yeah, I mean, genuinely, both the parents were in there and I was having an unmedicated labor. So, and I'm hilarious whenever I'm in pain, I guess. But, really just getting to, I had the baby. She was brought to my chest. The mom got to cut her cord and everything. And, while they were dealing with me, the mom did skin to skin, and, they immediately got to start bonding with their baby. And I thought that it was so cool to see. It was kind of one of those things like, blood is thicker than water. And after I had the baby, I tried to hold her after everything was over. She did not want me to hold her. I was like, girl, we spent 10 months together and you don't even want me to hold you. That's crazy. But I mean, and it's not even like we got to hang out with the parents all the time. So she was used to their voice.
Right.
I mean, she wanted her mom.
Huh.
I thought it was really, really cool.
That is.
Yeah.
Alison, I have found this conversation to be so enlightening, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come share your surrogacy journey.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I had a great time. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.